So I was doing this video and researching what free market capitalism without government intervention would look like when we become free, when no one's allowed to, or when no one is forced to do anything. So I was over here chatting to my friend at Chat GBT, and I asked her this question: what are the drawbacks of free market capitalism without government intervention? And it gave me 10 examples, which I believe it's mainly because it's learned from the mainstream media what these drawbacks are, and I would like to debunk all of them. So for example, the first one, wealth inequality. Without government intervention, some individuals and businesses may accumulate wealth at a much faster rate than others, leading to a wider gap between the rich and the poor. This can also lead to social and economic unrest and destabilization. Well, the fact is, this only happens because of government intervention. So today we have the richest people in the world having more wealth than the 50% of the total population. And the reason why that can happen is because these rich individuals will tap into governments and ask governments to help them with new regulations and donate money to governments so that the governments can do things for them while in power. And because of this, this eliminates competition between the new companies that exist, it prevents new companies from existing, and then it prevents from the small people to ever become wealthy. In a true free market capitalistic society without government intervention, all the individuals have the same playing field. They're not the rich people can't ask the government to create new laws to prevent others from entering their market. A good example of that is the minimum wage laws. So with minimum wage laws, companies like McDonald's can easily afford someone, the new minimum wage laws, like £11 an hour, for example, for a low skilled worker, where a small burger shop can't be paying £11 an hour to a staff without any skills. So what happens is the small shops aren't allowed to exist because it's just not viable. Okay, so the second one is free market capitalism without government intervention can lead to exploitation of workers, and businesses may prioritize profit over fair wages and working conditions. Trust me, free market capitalism would eliminate this in the first place. And it's the government intervention that creates this problem. So imagine there's no such thing as a minimum wage law, and it's for the whole country. So if companies want to keep their staff, they need to pay them what the going rate is. They can't just not pay them a good wage, because these staff would leave. Obviously, if a new staff member starts and they are learning, they would agree between the staff member and the employer, okay, I will start on £3 an hour, but as I become better, I would like to earn more. And as he becomes better, they would have to pay more to keep the staff. If the staff member was rubbish, then yeah, he would go and he must probably get sacked anyway. But because there's no government intervention, staff are free to negotiate with employers how much they should be earning. An employer will not be able to exploit workers, because they know if they do, the workers would leave to go somewhere else so they could earn more money for the work that they're doing. So that alone is completely wrong. Monopolies, this is a good one. In a completely free market, there is a risk of some businesses may become so dominant that they can control the market, leading to higher prices and reduced competition. Trust me, monopolies can only exist because of governments. Monopolies exist because big, massive companies will lobby governments into creating new laws to prevent competitors from coming into their market. That is the only reason why monopolies work. Monopolies cannot exist in a free market capitalism, because when a big company becomes so big and they start putting prices up, the fact that they're putting prices up will create new competitors that can say, wait a second, I can supply the same service or product at a cheaper price, and in that way, the competitor is keeping the big company at bay. There's no way they'll be able to create monopolies in a free market society. A free market capitalistic society, the free market is the regulator. It is impossible for monopolies to exist in a free market capitalistic society. Externalities. Without government intervention, businesses may not take into account negative externalities that their operations can have in the environment and public health, leading to pollution and other environmental problems. This is another issue. There's no way in a free market capitalism this would happen. So I'll give you an example. Free market capitalism's only goal is to create better products at a cheaper price. And look at where it's been going over the last century. So basically, back in the day, we used to have, a massive collection of DVDs and VHS tapes, physical items, so we could watch our favorite films. Now we don't need those because it's all digitized. That's good for the environment. If there was no government intervention, companies like Tesla would be able to innovate so quickly that there would be no more pollution because the electric cars would be along, because prices, the goal of free market capitalism is to bring prices down and increase quality. So when the self-driving car comes along, guess what? We no longer need to build these cars because the same transportation services that we have today can all be done with a fraction of the cars. So because one car will be able to drive 1 million miles a year and replacing like 100 cars. So again, when full self-driving comes along, the need to build new cars will no longer exist. So therefore, it brings down pollution. It's only when there's government intervention that happens. So government, we know that there are chemical companies. Imagine like BP that had that big massive oil spill. That happens because free market capitalism wasn't allowed to flourish and eliminate cars in the first place. That's just one example. Free market capitalism will eliminate the need for us to produce physical items, which is better for the environment. Let it flourish and you'll see the difference. Short-term thinking. Businesses may prioritize short-term gains over long-term sustainability, which can lead to the consumption and depletion of natural resources. That gets back to my previous point. Free market capitalism only goal is to provide better services at a lower price. If they don't do those two, they cannot exist. And if they cannot exist, they will go bankrupt and then new companies will come along that will be able to provide that. That is how it should work. Only the best companies can survive, and the best companies will not be polluting because free market capitalism will prevent that from polluting. People cannot do that. Governments cannot do that. Only the free market capitalism can do that. Lack of public goods. In a free market system, there may be a lack of investment in public goods such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and essential for the well-being of society. Trust me, that will not happen as well. Because in a free market capitalism, there will actually be more education. There will actually be more investment in not public, because if a public good is freedom, that's public. We are responsible for ourselves. We don't need governments to be telling us what to do or what to build, because if there's a need, a company or a person will come along and fulfill that need. Like healthcare, we don't need the government to do that, because in a free market capitalistic society, there will be clinics and hospitals that will pop out of everywhere, because they'll be competing for your business. They will be competing for, they can only exist if they provide a good service at a lower price, and then more drugs will be allowed to be developed at a cheaper price. The only reason why drugs are so expensive today is because of governments. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. This is a good one. Information asymmetry. In a free market, Some businesses may have more information than others, which can lead to a disadvantage and exploitation of consumers. That happens now with governments. There is such a lack of transparency in information. Thank God for the internet, because the internet is basically giving us a fighting chance to be able to to have the information we need to be able to become free. Because at the moment, governments are using private information to keep us down and prevent us from rising, preventing us from becoming free. Instability. Without government intervention, there's a risk of market instability and economic crisis, as businesses may engage in risky behaviors and speculation. That sounds like what's happening right now with government intervention. So without government intervention, there will be no such thing as volatile businesses or volatile markets, because how we measure how economy grows is by how much the prices drop. Because think about it, everybody wants to have most product at a cheaper price. Everybody wants more time. Inflation makes no sense when everybody is trying to save money. It's deflation that's good for us. So even 10 years ago, the cost of that TV in the back over there, that's a 42-inch TV. I remember buying one like that for £800 in 2008, and it was thick and it was heavy. Okay, that TV now costs £200. We want to save money. We don't want to pay more money. So in a free market capitalistic society, without government intervention, prices will drop. Quality of life will improve. We won't have to work as much. So all the things that governments are saying that we need them for, like for example, pensions, we don't need that, because prices will be so low that we'll be able to pay for a basic standard of living with only 10 hours of work a week. That, it's so simple. So we could retire, a normal person could retire at 25 if they want, because if they want to earn more money, they can work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Their basic needs only cost them 10 hours. The rest could be saved in a bank, and that bank is a free market bank which has interest set by the free market. So imagine you put £100,000 and it's earning you 10% a year. So that's £10,000 a year. But imagine it only costs you £10,000 a year to meet your basic needs. Guess what? You're able to retire on £100,000 a year. Guess what? You've retired at a young age. And because you've retired at a young age and all your basic needs are met, you can pursue other things. You can pursue your passions. You can open up a business. You can open up a charity. There's so much you can do because you've retired early. At the moment, we've got this carrot of retiring at 66. Why? We don't need to retire at 66. We can retire whenever we want. Free market capitalism allows us to do this. Government intervention prevents us from doing this. Okay? Limited access. In a free market, some individuals and communities may have limited access to goods and services due to factors such as location, income, and discrimination. That would be eliminated with free market capitalism, because everybody would have access to amazing education, amazing healthcare, amazing, food and services, because the prices would be low and the quality would be higher. It's so straightforward. Basically, this would open up to the whole world. The first country that becomes free. Look at America. Look what happened to America when they became free. They became the biggest superpower in the world. And guess what? Everybody wanted to go to America, back in the day, because they said it was the land of the free, the land of the opportunity. There was no governments trying to take stuff from you or interference. Do you think when the Italians went from Sicily to New York, they had government, help? They did not have any help whatsoever. That's why you hear this story saying, when I came to this country, I only had $1 and look what I've got right now. Why? Because they fought for it and they did whatever needed to be done. And then once they became more established, they got the whole family. There was no government help in those days. So America has become such a big superpower because of freedom. Freedom is like a superpower. Freedom is like, it's like, I can tell you, if let's say a small country like Portugal made this law of we cannot be forced to do anything, that country will become bigger than America. There will be such a big superpower that will become bigger than any other country in the world. And once one country does it, all the other countries will do. Lack of accountability. Without government intervention, businesses may not be held accountable for their actions, leading to unethical practices and harm to consumers as society as a whole. Well, government's only job in a free market capitalistic society without government intervention, that means, and imagine we have this one law that we cannot force anyone to do anything. Government's only job is to make sure of that law is being adhered to make sure that no one's being forced to do anything. And they can take actions, because these companies that are forcing people to do things, they are breaking the law. So if they're breaking the law, they will be accountable by government, and that government's only job is to make sure that no one else is being forced to do anything. So the unethical practices would completely disappear, because unethical practices is things like stealing, lying, and that's all against the law of you cannot do anything that you cannot force me to do anything. So therefore, that alone, the government's only job is to make sure that our freedoms are adhered to. So the governments there would be a government intervention to prevent, to keep us free. Government's job is not to keep us safe, but to keep us free. We are responsible for keep our own safety. Another thing, that, just at the point of safety, people say, what would happen to, police? How would the police work? Well, again, in a free market capitalistic society, security companies would exist to keep us safe, to keep us free. Okay, so basically, anyone trying to steal, we would call 911 or 111 or whatever the number is. The police would come and they would make sure that we are kept safe from someone else trying to force us to do anything. Things like stealing is wrong because it's taking something from you without your permission. Killing is wrong is because it's taking your life without your permission. So that's the only law. We cannot be forced to do anything without our permission. So it was very interesting to see how Chat GBT is also basically indoctrinized in the world we live in today, but not the world we could live in the future if this one law becomes a reality. So yeah, listen, I want to be free, and I don't think anyone can argue against freedom, because the main argument I hear from people is, but we need healthcare, we need education. Why do we need that? Why are we forced to need these things? We don't need this from governments. We need it from free market capitalistic society. We are responsible for ourselves, then we are responsible for our families, and then we are responsible for our communities. And in a free market capitalistic society, that is a solution. Freedom is a solution. I need you to join me on this journey to becoming free. There's only one thing we need to do, and that one thing is, let's demand our freedom. We know of all the problems that are happening today. We know that there is corruption. We know that the governments lie. We know that we are being duped. We know that. But what can we do about it? And I can tell you, there's only one thing we can do about it, is get together and demand our freedom. Let's create such a massive community of maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 million people only wanting one goal. The goal is this one law. We should not be forced to do anything. Once that happens, governments as we know it will cease to exist. We will become free, and we will have a true free market capitalistic society without government intervention, and we are responsible for our own lives. On the other hand, if there are people that like the government as it is, they can pay taxes for them. They can become, they can be looked after by these governments. But the people that want to be free, Let's all, it's a choice, it's freedom. The people that they want to stay in the status quo, they can stay it, and they can have access to all the social cares and everything. But then there's people that don't want to be forced to, you know, retire at 60, or to be forced to use the hospitals that there's no choice, or the schools that there's no choice. Let us create our own schools and hospitals. Let us create our own, you know, society that is based on freedom. And I'll tell you, I urge any country, and I tell you this now, any country that decides to become free, they will become more powerful than America is today. Any country that has that law, you cannot be forced. I'm telling you, I would move into that country tomorrow. I would be there tomorrow, because it would be like, freedom is such an underestimated word. Freedom is so powerful that it can lift everybody from poverty. It can lift, you know, it just makes life so much better, you know. And people don't think about freedom long. Freedom to them is just another word, but freedom is what makes us who we are. We strive for freedom. Our goal is to work as less as possible, to earn as much as possible, so we could have as much time as possible doing what we want to do. So that can only happen with freedom, and that cannot happen when people are telling us what to do. So let us join together. Let us become free. Join my Patreon. Like this video. Subscribe. Do all the usual stuff. I'm not going to edit this video. I'm just going to post it now, because one of the reasons why I've been stopping myself from doing these videos is because I'm thinking, oh, I need to be perfect. I need to do this. I need to read from a script. No, I'm going to post this without even reviewing it. I hope you like it, and please join me on this journey to freedom.